Mr. Falana, we're almost at the point where we'll take a break, but I just want to take you up on this issue you raised on the elite. It's almost impossible to have anybody who is not the elite at a position where decisions will be made. And that is why, to a great extent, the elites are supposed to represent the downtrodden or the members of society who might not have access at that level. Is it out of place to ask that there should be uniform, at least in line with the Constitution, uniform representation for every zone of the country?
Apart from the Constitution, there is also the Federal Character Commission Act, which provides that if you have two positions, one must go to the north, one must come to the south. If you have 4, 2 up there, 2 down here. If you have 6, 1 per geopolitical zone, and so on and so forth. If for any reason, one side constitutes the government, or majority of the government is constituted by one part, of course, that is clearly illegal. But for those who are worried that members of their own political class, don't mind you, it's not about the side, the zones. It's about those who represent you.
Mr. Atiku has rejected the elections results and has vowed to go to court. We know that in the history of this country, there's not been a situation where a sitting president has been removed from office by a court judgment. What do you think about this decision, and what do you foresee in this case? Is there evidence to suggest that
in fairness to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, he has his right, constitutional right, to take part in the election, to decide either to accept or not to accept the result. Where Nigerians can quarrel with him is if he goes outside the ambit of the law in challenging the result of the election. But if he has opted to go to court, and this is not the first time he has done so, because when you question election results in a few states, the attitude of the law is to look at what happened in all the other parts of the country. And it becomes more problematic where your agent signed and endorsed the results. So you can't challenge an election at the level of collation, unless you are talking of mathematical miscalculation.
Why can't he challenge it at the level of collation when the PDP is alleging that the figures were changed at collation level?
No, what I mean is this. I'm saying that you don't send somebody to where the chairman of INEC was reading results, making declarations, and then say stop it. No. That's not what the law provides for. Let the declaration be made, let the returns be announced, then you go to court.
What do you think are his chances in court?
It's very tough. Very. Again, it can be painful. It can be painful. And I find it interesting that over the years, the concerns that have been expressed with respect to our electoral jurisprudence, with respect to conducting elections devoid of violence and illegality, as far as members of the political class are concerned, you are simply entertaining yourself.
Let me bring you to one issue.
So,
I think
for instance, President Yar'Adua set up the Mohammed Uwais panel of inquiry to look at our electoral system, electoral reforms. The report was ignored. And one of the most fundamental suggestions in that report, or some of the most fundamental recommendations, had to do with the appointment of INEC chair and other members. And this should be by advertisement. because the government in power didn't want a reform, the report was ignored. President Jonathan set up the Amen Lemu Post-Election Violence Committee in 2011. Again, the same recommendations, similar recommendations were made, including reiterating the recommendation that there should be an electoral offenses commission or tribunal. Again, ignored. President Muhammadu Buhari set up the Ken Namani Electoral Reform Committee. Again, the recommendations were ignored. And those are the recommendations challenging the system now.
Mr. Falana, I'd like to bring you to the electoral process proper. Some persons have complained about INEC's refusal to pay close attention to eyewitness reports of violence in certain polling units or some electoral offenses in some of these polling units. Do you think INEC should depend solely on the report of its resident electoral commissioners or returning officers, or pay at least close attention to some of these other reports, considering the fact that there's a provision that allows persons to go to the polling unit with their phones to take, make recordings and then at least report some of these offenses?
Unfortunately, the law does not provide for investigation before announcement of results are made. It's difficult. If INEC had stopped the announcement and commenced the investigation of all the complaints, all manners of allegations will have been made. But what the law requires is that based on the return made by the resident electoral commissioner or the chief electoral commissioner, that's the chairman of INEC, you can then go to court with your evidence to challenge the return that has been made. And this is not, so many results of elections in Nigeria have been set aside. But we must still go back to the drawing table. All of us. How do we ensure that we de-emphasize the influence of money in our election? How do we ensure that all electoral offenders before, during, and after election are punished under the law so that you can put an end to impunity? But once it is convenient for us, when we are in power, to rubbish electoral reforms, when you are out of power, you are in trouble. And that's what is going on.
Mr. Fana, we're almost out of time now, but let's look at the forthcoming governorship and state House of Assembly elections coming up now. We have, we understand some of the issues that went wrong, so to speak, with the presidential and National Assembly elections. From your perspective, what are the lessons that we can take from that to ensure that a repeat does not occur in the forthcoming elections?
I mean, frankly speaking, by now, I expected that the 120 people arrested by the police will have been charged, will have been taken to court, dragged to court, so that others will learn some lesson that, oh, it does not pay to engage in impunity. And that's why I've appealed to INEC, pursuant to Section 150 of the Electoral Act, to ensure that all electoral offenders arrested by the police and other security agencies are arrested and taken to court. Because if you leave it in the hands of the police, once the charges are filed in court and the elections are over and the public decides to move on, the respective attorneys general will be directed by the government in every state to withdraw those cases quietly, and no prosecution will be filed. The cases will be withdrawn. And then we wouldn't have learned anything. And that was why those electoral panels, the 3 electoral panels, reform panels that I mentioned earlier, had recommended the establishment of an independent electoral offenses tribunal. Unfortunately, the ruling parties, both the PDP and the APC, have not paid any attention to that suggestion. The other one, I was reading a couple of days ago, where a governor, a lawyer, was asking the International Criminal Court to come and prosecute electoral offenders in his state. I asked myself, do you know what the International Criminal Court is all about? The International Criminal Court will come to a country where the system is so weak, the legal system is so weak, that either, to the extent that either the government is unwilling or unable to prosecute, those who engage in crimes against humanity. The International Criminal Court is not set up to deal with electoral offenses unless you can show there is a pattern of killings that will translate to amount to crimes against humanity.
Mr. Falana, we're out of time now. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you for coming in hard copy.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Now, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. I'd like to say thank you to you for watching as well. If you'd like to catch up on the interview again, go to channelstv.com, click on videos and find it there. And you could also find past editions there. Send your feedback to us using our email address and social media handles displayed on the screen. I'm Terry Ikumi. Bye for now.